In this video, I will review the invoicing options on the proposal configuration page. The first option here, use deliverables invoice percent during invoice creation. What this means is there's an invoice percent column, and when you're preparing to invoice, you'll come in here, click on it, say, I want to invoice 50% of this line, and I want to invoice 25% of this line, and then I want to invoice 100% of this line. And then when you create the invoice record from this proposal, that whatever amount is picked in here or entered will be invoiced. So if you had already invoiced 50% of this line and you make it 100%, then the next 50% will be invoiced on the next invoice record for this proposal. These other two options are default percent for timeline items and default percent for expense line items. So you could put in 25 here and it would default that to that value. The next option, use percent as the hours and quantity value on the line items. So what this means is if you have a quantity of 10 and you invoice 50%, then the invoice line item will say 5 times the rate. This next option, append invoice percent progress to the invoice line item description. This will include in the line item description how much progress there has been from the percent invoice column. This next option, enable transfer of blank proposal total value deliverables to invoices. If you have this turned on, then blank lines will be added to the invoice record. If you don't have it turned on, then the blank lines will not be transferred. Enable lock of deliverable when invoicing. So if you have this on, once the line is invoiced, it cannot be edited any longer. Same thing here. If you want to just lock the forecast date when invoicing, so if you're using the forecasting features, the forecasted date will lock once it's invoiced. And then this option, require a forecast date to invoice a line item. If you are using the line item, the forecasting by the invoicing by forecasting, then you have to have the line item. This option, create invoice by forecast date to include non-invoice lines with an earlier forecast date. So let me just talk about forecast dates. On your proposal, you can put a forecast date of when this line is going to be invoiced. And there's even an option to split the lines if it's going to be part in one month and part in another month. There's other videos for that. But the option I'm describing there means if I click this plus invoice, it will invoice all of the May lines and all of the April lines. If this checkbox is not on, then this plus invoice will only create an invoice for April, and this plus invoice will only create an invoice for May. So checkbox on, invoice all of these lines. Checkbox off, you're only going to, for this particular feature, then you will only be invoicing the month that the same lines are in. The next option, ability to create separate invoice line items by deliverable split lines. So again, this is if you have splits turned on up here, then you can create invoices from the individual lines that are split out. So again, this is for if you're forecasting with where the lines have to be broken down into multiple months. This enable the lock of the split line. So when it is invoiced, it will lock the lines of the splits that were invoiced. There is a separate video on split lines. This other one here, include plus invoice in the group by. This checkbox turns on means that this will create a plus invoice in these lines to make it easier to invoice them. So I do recommend using that feature if you are invoicing by the forecasted dates. Show within X days of forecast. So that means that normally the group by will not put a plus invoice until you're past this date. So right now it's June, so I have a plus invoice now for the May lines. But if I wanted the next box to show a month early, I could say within, or a week, let's say, I want the plus line to be within 7 days of the end of the month. Then this plus invoice will show up for this 5/1 day on April 23rd. Finally, a couple more. Enable invoice create button from the project invoices and proposals view. So that means that if that's turned on, then you will see, go to the project, and then I'll go, this is the proposals. We're talking about this view right here. Then the plus invoice line is there. And just to help you see how this works, I'm going to hit plus invoice, hit save, and you'll see my lines that I marked. They should come over. There they are. See, I'm back to the original percentage invoicing by percentages. Now I'm gonna delete this so it'll undo it, and now I can go back to my proposal that I was working on. And then the same thing here. I'm gonna choose plus invoice, and you'll see I'm gonna get a line, just those 2 lines in it, a couple lines there as well. I think I checked invoice everything, so that's why there's more. But that's how you invoice by the forecast dates. And then finally, skip the invoice creation screen, which don't generally recommend this. It's nice to see the invoice screen where you can put other data, but if you check this box, it'll take you straight to, it'll create the invoice and not let you see the add edit form for the invoice. But you can always edit it even if you have this turned on. It's just a quicker way to get there. So that's what the invoicing options are for a proposal.